usage and even sometimes access as well. So Natalie decided let's do our own data set for the state to help us with this project and anything else that we can use this data set for. So that's the background. So the data sets used for this projects are whatever we have that we can access freely. So most of the or the majority of them are the LiDAR data sets that we have from for the New Mexico for the state of New Mexico from 2014 till what the recent one is 2018. And then in addition to that, we've used county mosaics from the NAEP program, MERCOG imagery, and the New Mexico address points, road center lines, and so as you can see on the screen, the list of those. And we didn't do data for some Native American lands because they did not want to share or use their data. Paul or Natalie would know more on this if people have questions on the access restrictions on those. Um, so you may see some gaps in the data, but there are Microsoft footprints if they're for those areas, but we did not generate anything for the LiDAR derived products for those. Just before, just a quick overview on LiDAR quality levels. You may have heard the terms QL2 most often. All of the New Mexico data were collected in QL2 standards, which is the nominal pulse density is greater than or equal to 2 points per square meters. And then there is research out there that in order to accurately generate the building footprints, at least we need 4 points per meter square. So just FYI there, what we are working with. So the extraction methodology, so we've used ArcGIS Pro for the entirety of this project. So these are a list of tools that we've used during the conversion of the data. So we converted those point cloud from the USGS LiDAR acquisitions to the last data set and then classified those last points for building group stops with the minimum parameters such as 2 meters in height and then a minimum of 6 square meters in like area. So we've categorized those and then we resampled those values using the LiDAR filter and then converted those to a raster data set. So the sampling values, so for you, all the LiDAR acquisitions except for MERCOG and Santa Fe, the resolutions are 1 meter, and then for MERCOG and Santa Fe, it is 2 feet. And then after that conversion from, rasters to vectors, we've ran like elevation void fill function to fill in any gaps within those that are 1 square meter area within the building polygon or surface of that building to fill those gaps and then vectorize those data. And then we have applied regularization strategies. So there are tools on ArcGIS Pro and also like functions or raster functions you can apply. So what regularize does is this picture on the slide explains better than what I can say. It kind of smooth out those polygons to create seamless polygons. Every you guys know when converting from rasters to vector, how polygons does not like um, or look like, right? Pixelated versions. So it kind of simplifies those polygons. So there are different strategies that we applied for different area polygons. So you can see those lists there. There's like buildings over 230 square meters. We've used any angle regularization and for 50 and 230 square kilometer, square meters, right angles and diagonals, and then less than 50 right angle regularizations. Um, So that's kind of the extraction process. Do you have any questions? Paul can answer.
I don't know. I just made it. Yeah, again, yeah, what Sandeep is showing there is, yeah, you always have the problem with the ragged edges, and so it's always a little bit of a deal to try to get rid of the ragged edges, and there's always holes in there. Sometimes you have issues between different levels, as you saw, like in the previous thing. There, the process ends up polygonizing different levels there. So one of the questions was, do we want one building or do we want to represent all the different levels? Because unfortunately, humans don't make a standard building product there. And so, we had to go through a number of things. How big a hole do we want in the middle? There's some holes are needed, some holes aren't. And do we need all the different levels or just have one contiguous product there? And then you have, when you get to sizes, you have issues like there are people that live in smaller things, and but we have to cut out threshold things that are too small, or else we're going to end up with a lot of garbage. But then we still end up with some amount of garbage when we get even at this level of minimization. So a lot of different things. We also had the issue where we were getting rid of things that are smaller than 2 meters in height. But again, there are some places where you could have probably a roof line that gets pretty close to the ground level. So there's a number of issues, and again, all comes down to stupid humans making complex buildings there. That's
yeah, and on these where this is, it looks pixelated, but is this pixelization an artifact of the fact that there's like tree canopy over the edge of the building? Like I was expecting that the elevation data would have been more consistent, and so I'm confused. Where does the rasterization of that come in if you've got points?
Yeah, yes, yeah. The deal is, we've got we're converting a bunch of points, and these points are scattering there. And those points get then averaged over the course of, as Sandeep said, like a square meter over most of this data set here. And so because you have in a square meter raster, so that's where you convert them, this kind of random set of points to a 1 meter grid cell. And so and you see that then that rasterization, you have in the process you have each grid cell going like, do I have a point here, do I not have a point here? And then you end up with that kind of grid thing. And grids don't provide smooth edges, so that's where you have to kind of get rid of the smooth edges then. You have to get rid of the ragged edges and turn them into smooth vector things. In my perfect world, we would all have raster edges, but there's a lot of GIS people here, so I'm going to default to smooth edges there. So,
Jackie?
I was just wondering if you are able to identify where these are like housing units, apartments, or business units.
We don't have that in there. Again, this is just pulling out stuff that sticks up above the ground that's not trees and not power lines and other thousands of other things there. So that's all we've done at this level. You could potentially take the data set and plop a zoning map on there and say if it's residential, then these are probably houses, and if it's in a kind of a mixed use or something, probably apartments, or on and on. But we haven't done that level. But it's open to that, so that there's all sorts of follow-on things that can be done with this.
Yeah, and Jackie, that's kind of the idea, right? There's this big, it's like, okay, let's have our very own like footprints data, and now let's figure out how can we attach attributes to those that make them more useful, from a planning or analysis perspective. Yeah, I think that'll be part of our later discussion of this.
One of the other issues too is how to define what a building is, as I kind of alluded to just earlier. But also it's like, when you're talking like half of the building things that we popped up with on the eastern side were things like pump stations and tanks and cracking plants and things like that. But are those considered buildings, or are they just infrastructure that we don't want to call buildings? Or, this whole definition of building becomes a big question. So what was decided in regards to this, because this is a broadband problem, was that it needed to have an address point associated with it. So everything else was tossed out there, but there are more buildings out there that could be other kinds of things. So these are ongoing discussions and different ways to develop the data.
Yeah, and Paul, I was intrigued when I read that methodology. I was like, no, I don't ever want to throw data away. And so I'm assuming that, there's a way that we could, or I'm hoping there's a way we could get back to, because I know when I worked at MNerd, I was very interested in this footprints analysis for identifying things like infrastructure, like the storage tanks and all of that they have out there. So yeah.
As we know, with
I'll let
all
you guys
digital
keep
data,
going.
nothing is deleted forever there, but it's just harder to get to. I think we've got access to all the original building
Yes.
stuff. We just need to pull it back out again someplace.
Sure.
Yes.
Yep.
We did kept a copy of the original data. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Great, gentlemen.
all right. So moving on. So the fun part is the heads-up digitizing and QA/QC. So as you can see this image right here, this is for a building. Even after our regularization of the polygons, we still see some gaps in between these, the footprints and some odd shapes. So we kind of performed additional functions such as dissolve and like eliminate polygon parts and stuff. So to kind of smooth out these polygons furthermore, so that it, the result of that process is what you're seeing on the screen right now. One example. Let's see, why is it not moving? All right. So as part of this project, we also used Microsoft Footprints data set, which is a freely available data for the United States. So they have data vintage as of 2020. And their process is based on the image extracting polygons directly from the high resolution imagery. So some of those their buildings have smooth edges and stuff. So wherever we have those data, we kind of used their polygons instead of ours. As you can see a comparison right here on the left, we have LiDAR extracted data for this portion of Carlsbad versus the Microsoft polygons, how clean the edges were and stuff. So because the sheer amount of the data or the area that we are working with, we wanted to eliminate any of these what do you call these situations where there's a lot more cleanup needed. So we relied on Microsoft Footprints for those areas. And then from the LiDAR extraction, a few screenshots for your, there are some random structures, rail cars, some barns, all of those kind of, what do you call, like the extraneous polygons that were returned. And then bridges. So these are all part of our QA/QC data cleanup. We've deleted any extraneous polygons. Another example of those is like rock faces on this slide and the airplane. I thought this is an interesting image that you might like it. So
On the rock faces,
yes,
that is something that we get on the broadband side. Like these people, the actual providers, service providers are like, we've been driving around and like half of these BSLs in this neighborhood are broadband serviceable locations are actually rocks. Like, what are we going to do about this? So like, I would love to have the subset of the extracted rock faces so that we could take those broadband serviceable locations out of the map.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I'm just saying, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then areas with tract housing, as we discussed, like the LiDAR point density. So these are the returns of those polygons right here. And then we had to manually like split those continuous polygons into individual houses based on the NAIP imagery. And then digitize new footprints because the data we've used, the data vintage is from 2014 till 2022, and we are already in 2024. So there are obviously new subdivisions popped up during that time. So we've tried to digitize as much as we can using the 2022 imagery, the NAPE and MERCOG. So that's kind of heads up digitizing. We did that for the statewide. And as Paul mentioned, we've kind of played with different definitions of buildings, like removing those barns and like other structures, oil wells and things like that. And then we kind of we aggregated the data set, including Microsoft and LiDAR, kind of created a statewide master data set. And then we assigned building heights using the LiDAR-derived DEMs and DSMs. So this kind of helped as an additional data QA/QC tool where you have these building heights. Some examples, there were like 2,000 feet high. There's nothing in our state that is that high of a like a building, right? So we kind of went through those weird numbers and kind of cleaned that data, or some areas, because either of lack of data or bad data, or new construction, we have negative heights or like sub-zero heights. So we've set these threshold values for building heights, a minimum of 6 feet and the maximum of 100 feet, and nulled every other value like that doesn't fit this criteria. And anything above 100 feet, we've looked at those individually to make sure those are not structures, and then we've deleted like rock faces and stuff like those. So any questions on that?
Well, I have a question there. Natalie, you touched on this, was the talking about the 3-depth issues there. Are they looking at, I mean, what would make this data set better is we had QL1 or even QL0 over the urban areas at least. Is there a discussion about a follow-on LiDAR project, especially one at a better resolution?
Well, I mean, I think that's, that C2 request, you may not have been on here, but I'm doing a special appropriation request this year to fund a study of what imagery and LiDAR data do we need sort of statewide to represent, the most important or the most overlapping or the most duplicative or, data collection events that are currently happening. And I am intrigued by the concept of, well, what about those counties that are collecting like obliques in in their areas? And Sean was following this in San Juan County, I think, right, where in their urban areas and Taos, like there's a couple of places that are collecting their urban area imagery more often than the rural. And so I think there's an opportunity for a lot of additional data sets to feed into this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combined thing, but it would be nice to update our LiDAR as it's becoming a little longer in the tooth there. And especially, I mean, again, most of the state probably does not need an update, but maybe the more urban areas and maybe the big fire prone areas. So those are the two areas, and everything else, I think the older data could be still sufficient there.
Right. Yep.
All right, so, well, that kind of concludes our process, our workflow. So the access and uses, currently the dataset is available on ArcGIS for download and review. And if you have any questions on the data or see some issues with the data, please do reach out to us, for sure, Natalie, and then also copy us or and the data set can be used for a number of purposes. Obviously, the purpose we've started this project for broadband, but like we can do for urban planning, climate resilience, disaster mitigation, so on and many more. Let's see. And the future of this data set, as I know we just discussed about updating the data set, right? So the data currency, the source data sets. So we whatever works. But LiDAR acquisition is expensive and a time-taking process, and we have other imagery sources, as Natalie just pointed out, and also the USDA NAEP program and MERCOG. So these imagery, we can this particular approach we've tried like a LiDAR-derived product, but instead we can do an imagery-derived footprint data set moving further if LiDAR data gets expensive or like time consuming in access or acquisition, sorry. There are other geo AI and deep learning models that we can use in addition to the current ARC tools. And ARC also have some deep learning models right now. They have some pre-trained models, but they require high resolution imagery from 10 to 40 centimeters is what their requirement is. However, in the past, the UC, I've learned that we can train other imagery as well. We haven't done that, and that could be something we can look into with training other resolution imagery and how those products would look like. And obviously, this current NAEP this year collected is at 30 centimeters. That's something we can also use and update this data set. And then obviously, the big concern or criteria is funding. So that kind of summarizes our process and this data set. Natalie?
Yay! So right on time. Look at that. Even after I had you start late. I definitely welcome you guys, like I sort of informally do, to stay on past noon for a little bit to talk about, brainstorm thoughts, bring your expertise on what you know about data sets that exist. I'd love to talk more. Susan had made the comment, right? Like the population counts are based on housing units. And so this could be extremely valuable data tied with the census data. Alan is putting something in there. The city updates a building footprint file, share with community maps of Esri. John won a certificate. So I would say if you were here for the presentation, thank you. And if you want to keep on discussing, just stay on as long as you can. Definitely we'll stop by 12:30, but this is exactly the kind of discussion I want. Drawn when a certificate of occupation is issued. It's our open data portal. Yay! Could be used to challenge Census Bureau counts. So the data are on ARGIS, and I think a big question is also what is so if someone uses your data and says, hey, I was looking in this area and it's not accurate, how would you recommend that they proceed? Send you new polygons? Like, is this, I hate to think of this as and I think you kind of said it, right? You were like, well, we took the oil and gas rigs out. You kind of like committed and said, we're not doing the roof lines, right? This is just the building footprints, right? And so in the purest sense, it seems like this is already like a derived work product that instead of going back to any previous state of it, the plan should be to maintain this one. Otherwise, we have to regenerate it. And so I'm interested in like, what do we propose, to do with edits that come in?
Well, this is Sean.
Hey.
Right? I mean, the bottom line is funding. This was a
Sure.
project that Broadband funded, and so going forward, there's no funding to support it. I mean, it's on ARGIS. We could log the errors. But yeah, that's a great question because, this obviously things are going to change. And if everybody had a workflow like Las Cruces, like when you got a certificate of occupancy, they snap the building footprint, that would be awesome. But I don't think everybody does that. So yeah, it's a great point of discussion. Just I don't know the answer for like how to keep it updated without funding.
And so I think that, broadband, with the idea that we are striving to build our own, broadband serviceable location data set ultimately, we can certainly entertain like some kind of support to manage updates as they come in, and potentially if we identified some specific instances like this one, would like reconciling it with like saying, okay, we're going to do a work order that is to reconcile these data with this local data set, right? City of Las Cruces has their own data set, so we want to incorporate that in. But then how would, I think it's almost like you'd have to scope how that incorporation happens, because then as soon as you incorporate it, that data set is out of date again, right? Like yours, because the source is maintaining a different
right, it's
data set.
already out of date because the LiDAR is so old and the Microsoft building footprints are old.
Sure.
Right. And it's also, the same issue that we discussed earlier about like, how do we know what projects are happening is like, we don't know when, how do we know when new subdivisions are built and like, I'm not even going to go for like individual housing units are built, but like whole new subdivisions are put in, that's another difficult thing to keep track of.
Yeah, I think it just becomes a patchwork repair as we get new, baseline data. Like obviously best case is like what Las Cruces, hey, we have footprints. So overlay that, evaluate, keep the best and update it that way. And then if we get a new watershed for FEMA flying LiDAR or the COG flies new imagery, we've talked about using some of, Esri or other, image analysis tools to do feature extraction from orthos. So there's a lot of ways to keep it going as new data comes in. But yeah, like it's funny, related obviously, but.
And so this gets into that whole concept of, who is the authoritative source for any area, right? And I feel like we would almost need to set up a like a geofence that says, okay, in this extent, City of Las Cruces is going to be the authoritative data source for the footprints within this geofence, right? And until another authoritative source comes up, like, oh, okay, now we're going to get some stuff from I can't remember who you said, right? Whether it was certainly the more urban areas, there's got to be planners and stuff that keep track of that. And it's like, can we set up like that kind of thing where the footprints exist, but that you're actually consuming some portion of it from someone who's a better authority on keeping it current?
Only if they're serving it.
Yeah, I don't know that method would be the most productive. Like obviously Las Cruces is maintaining it, annually. That's authoritative. But if say Rio Rancho, who's not maintaining footprints, but we get a MR COG, new ortho or new LiDAR flight, we would just go in and generate it anyways and not wait for them. And I think same in Las Cruces, we generate it and compare and, pluck out what looks the best. But I think if we count on individual entities to become a data steward, it gets too in the weeds. I think the
Is
updates
Larry
are going to come
here?
in mass.
Larry
No, I think he
Brotman?
left.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
there he's
So
He's
I feel like you're like the expert on this concept, right?
I am? How could that be?
Where it's like you've got local data sources, right? And some of them are, regularly feeding data that you just consume, and other ones you're playing more of a facilitating role to maintain it, right? I feel like footprints kind of can fit in the same way, in that same model, like parcels.
Well, we regularly aggregate parcels twice a year. So we're not acquiring those through any service of any kind. They're actually uploading them to us twice a year.
Right.
And similar is true for incorporated place boundaries. I mean, there's an active process of collecting those and uploading them to me. So we're not harvesting those from any service of any kind. So it once it's uploaded to us and aggregated, it becomes static data.
Sure. Well, and that's still better than the whole statewide footprints just becoming out of date more randomly, right? So maybe the model is something like if Broadband says, okay, spend the next 6 months polling all of the people who might have data, right, that you could use to update, then build us a scope that says, okay, biannually or quarterly or whatever makes sense for those, for what the data sources are.
Yes. If you have new data, upload it to us.
Right.
I mean, and
Yeah.
actually one marker of like new construction would be like 911 addresses, right? Because when you build, you get an address and that would go into the 911 database. So, maybe a first step, which has not yet been done, to be clear, is to like attach the addresses to the footprints.
Well, and I just remember Brian a few minutes ago mentioning subdivisions. I didn't even know there was a league of subdivision planners. What a great source of data for us at the state to have them provide us new subdivisions as they draw them in and upload those to us in some way.
And I didn't even hear that. Did he type? Well, I'm glad this is being recorded, but not like I'm going to
I
go
don't
back
know.
and
Did
watch
Brian
it.
actually say that?
I think he did. Maybe I'm giving him
Brian.
credit and he doesn't deserve it.
I was just
No.
going to be quiet and take credit, but no, I don't think I did. There's a League of Zoning Officials. Was that what you had heard, Larry?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
they were meeting this week. I don't know that
They're-
they actually have.
No, but I think they probably have, once a subdivision has been approved, it gets platted. I would imagine they have access to that.
Mhm.
Right.
I think maybe it was Susan that mentioned it. Somebody did.
It was Heather
Uh-huh.
from Carlsbad because they're meeting in Carlsbad.
Yeah, but yeah.
In the context of this, right?
Yeah.
I think I heard Brian say that he wanted to head a league of subdivision planners, and he's been right on it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. That's exactly what I heard him say.
I think he can assign that to Tyler, who said he had all this free time.
There you go.
Okay, so
Well, I guess I have a question for Alan then, because you guys have the good data, right? The local data is always better than broad stroke statewide data. How would you as a data steward for your municipality want to see updates get pushed into this?
If you can consume a service, then our data is actually being pulled out as a service. But I understand that it's difficult to aggregate a whole bunch of services together to try to display it in some sort of
Yeah.
without having all kinds of other problems.
Well,
this is why we want to get to the API model, right? So that eventually we are figuring out how to automate that kind of thing with like a notebook server or something so that it just happens.
Oh, that's true. That could be something that could be done.
Yeah.
The other problem we have is that how we're doing it is it's not done as a certificate of occupancy is generated. It's because we only get imagery flown twice a year for the city from a company called Nearmap, which gives us 3-inch resolution. The problem though is that it only comes out twice a year. And so what we have to do is say, okay, let's update our building footprint, our address point, and our sidewalks, all when the imagery comes in. So we start a project every 6 months to update those 3 things, basically. The addresses are actually created as soon as it's subdivided or as soon as there's an address change. Again, it's also a service. But the issue is that when we drop that point, we just drop the point in the center of the parcel. If it's a building and a building address, then we'll actually move the point to the center of the building. So that way the building can then assume or grab the address point for its data in a process. So I think I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think to Natalie and Larry's point, Larry has the advantage of he's got 33 assessors working towards parcels in their jurisdiction, but we don't have that for footprints, obviously. So I think that model of aggregation once a year would work in some small areas, but I think mostly I see the updates for this coming through when we get a new ortho flight, or if NAPE ever becomes high enough resolution to use some of the Esri tools for feature extraction from orthos. We could do statewide updates when funding's available. But I think it's going to come as tranches of data come in and can be digested, and as funding allows. I don't see it being sort of a piecemeal of entities doing their own and then combing it together. I don't think that'll be sustainable.
I think you have a big chore ahead of you if you tried to do it that way.
Yeah.
And Natalie mentioned oblique imagery that some of the counties have, and there are a number of counties that have imagery services from Eagle View, which used to be pictometry. But unless something has changed with a number of those counties, it's really not their data. The license agreements are services provided to them, but they don't actually have access to the data itself, could not upload that or share that to anybody unless they added that to their license agreements.
And that's another example of where, developing a plan and figuring out, okay, well, how do we make this so that we can actually generate a suite of data products or whatever off of it. Yeah, I definitely would add that to the scenario. The other thing that we discovered, I'd heard, I guess, through all those speed dating things and all these conferences, right, from these imagery vendors, right? But like Vexel during the Ruidoso fires, I ended up connected with Brian Garcia. I don't know if he's on here. He was thinking about coming. From Vexel, and they, for the insurance consortium, do a lot of building footprint work, like structures work, so that when there are incidents, those data are available. And so there may be a solution that is available. I don't know, like this whole vendor space has a lot of options, and it's about figuring out the puzzle to incorporate those.
Right, but the vendor solutions don't usually end up with free data for redistribution.
No, that's right. That's right. And that's the same thing I'm dealing with like this CostQuest and the broadband serviceable locations.
Right.
Like,
how do I, as the person who gives away data in the state, I always have to say it.
Yep. No, exactly.
And that's our problem with Nearmap, with the city of Las Cruces, is that we have a contract and it cannot be released to the public unless we create a separate API call that degrades the image to be able to support or share out to the world. And unfortunately, the ortho photos that come along with that, or the ortho imagery, is not part of that negotiation. So we would not be able to release that to anyone else, unfortunately.
But your work product, did I mishear? Your work product of the footprints, though, is your own, even though it's built on their imagery.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Alan, this is Sandeep. I have a question. Do you do like automated extraction, or do you do manual digitizing of the polygons?
We actually just manually draw them at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And do you guys do you know, like Alan, do you know, since you've been around? Do you know if there is is there something that functions like the GIS affiliate of New Mexico counties? Is there a forum where you get together with the other GIS folks from the larger municipalities in the state and talk about these kind of things?
Does the municipal league has a GIS group?
I don't know. I don't know. Did you say they do or you don't know?
No, I was a question like I just
Yeah,
yeah.
I couldn't find one online. They don't have one
I've
that's
never
that.
heard of one. I've never heard of one. We've always wanted one, but I don't think we've ever heard that one existed.
Yeah, I mean, my participation was just with NIMJIG every once in a while. At one point, New Mexico State University, Dr. Brown was putting together a consortium for Southern New Mexico for data, authoritative data sources. And so we started actually doing something like that, but he was not able to continue that, and we did not continue, unfortunately.
Oh,
That
interesting.
might be a good polling question for the Association of Counties and the GIS affiliate, because it's not local to the municipal level, but they would probably know if there were, data sets available within their county.
Yeah, we do work actually pretty closely with Doñana County. They've actually had a pretty high turnover of people, but we're finally starting to get back to better communication for sure.
Amazing. So I think that I would love to have, and so you said Doñana County, yeah, so maybe I can get City of Las Cruces. Yeah, I'm gonna brainstorm that, but who in this whole imagery and elevation data needs assessment could contribute, but it sounds like certainly City of Las Cruces, since you're here, I suspect City of Albuquerque similarly, and Bernalillo County and Santa Fe County could make a pretty solid representation of at least the more urban, work that you already do, and how we might model something broader than that, in other areas. So that's really good. So what happened with Dr. Brown? Did Dr. Brown retire from NMSU or?
He maintained it for quite a while, but then he had some health issues and had to step away. He's back to teaching and he's back to being involved, but he is not running that program.
I would love if you sent me his contact information. I'd love to call him and just or send him an email and say I want to talk to him.
Let's go find him in October, Natalie.
Oh, yes.
He'll be there.
Hunt him down.
I'm
All
sure.
right.
I'm sure he'll be there.
What do you know what his first name is? Track down Dr. Brown.
Doctor.
Cool.
I can probably find it for you and get you the information.
Yay. All right, side meeting. Find out if he drinks beer.
I'm sure he does.
Oh, good. Yay. Then we'll try and have something Thursday after the workshops. Okay. Any other ideas? There are a lot of options out there, various flavors, subscription data, custom collected. You pool your resources, single purchase, you increase your ability to go negotiate more favorable items.
Yeah,
Matt,
a lot
I
of
appreciate
those.
that.
Yeah, a lot of the vendors out there, us included, will will happily modify their strict licensing terms if you bring enough money to the table. So it's pretty straightforward when it comes to dealing with vendors in that way. So
Yeah.
Another argument for, again, the statewide plan to get everybody on the same page and pulling for the same types of things. So.
Yeah.
Everything's possible with bags of money.
Yeah, I had a question for Daniel
Exactly.
Estrada.
Daniel, are you here? Yeah, he is. I think. Daniel?
Yeah, I'm here.
I know that the city of Albuquerque in the past has had building footprints, but I looked the other day and they weren't on the Aegis download. Is the city not supporting them anymore?
Oh, we didn't have them because the last one I think we had was like from 2010, 2012 around
2012. Yeah.
Okay.
I found
there. And we
service.
we were going to update them from the 2014, but we know what happened there. And that's why I was asking if they were available so that we can.
Right. No. I was just curious because I remember like sometime in the dark past, and I can't even remember what project was. We'd use the city's building footprints for something or another. Oh, maybe that earthquake scenario thing. I don't know. So I was just checking back in about them, and they weren't there. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Are we talking about also Dr. Christopher Brown, Department of Geography?
Yes, that is correct. He's not the department head anymore, but
right.
He still teaches and is a professor.
Yeah. Natalie, I can give you his email address.
Oh, thanks. All right. Well, I feel satiated and fully overwhelmed.
Excellent work, Sandeep.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you. Huh?
Paul.
Sandeep, but Brian, lots of good student workers there too.
Yeah, I was going to say, really,
yes,
it was
a lot of
the
human...
6 students that
that
gave
are no
carpal
longer in
tunnel
existence now.
And now they all know they don't want to go into
right.
into GIS.
Natalie, what's that cool poster in the back there?
Oh yeah, the ocean floor. I got that at an ESRI conference, and it's glow in the dark, so it's the reverse, right? So here's North America, and these are all the fault lines, and then when it glows in the dark, you can see all the like volcanoes and all the ridge lines. It's pretty cool.
Oh, neat. A change in perspective there. Okay, great.
Exactly.
All right. Good talking to you all. Bye.
Brian, write up a work order for building footprints.
Is he there or gone?
Okay.
I guess Sandeep, you're going to have to do it.
Oh, okay.
He sensed that you were going to give him more work to do, and he bugged out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you
all later.
Good to
Great
see
meeting,
you.
Natalie. Good seeing y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.